All right, then if everyone is ready, please find a comfortable position. And even before you close your eyes, you can already tell your body to relax and tell your mind to come back to you, to let everything else, every topic, everything go for a moment. What we do is, for this short meditation, we just bring our body back to ourselves, to our body, the emotions we perceive or might not perceive. And then we strive to do nothing but just observe. And as you wander off, you just gently, softly escort your mind back. And when you're back, you just observe again. What do I find? How does my body feel? How do I feel emotionally? And just observe. You have to do nothing. You just sit here, relaxed. Maybe you feel your chest rising and falling. This is our time right now to check in with ourselves and to see the reality that is right now. Whatever you find is okay. It's just simply how it is right now. Moment to moment, these sensations, the feelings, everything changes a bit, and we do nothing. Just relax, observe. And our mind wanders off, which is gently, softly escorted back to ourselves. if we are someone with very belligerent, belligerently taking someone else to the dance floor, escorting them to the dance floor. That's what we do when it wanders off. It's to be expected. That's why we practice mindfulness, bringing the mind back to ourselves. We check back in and realize that our body is already a little bit more relaxed than before we started this meditation. Our breath is already coming slower, rising and falling. Ask yourself, is my mind still with me? If it is not, no problem. Good. You get to practice mindfulness by bringing it back to yourself. This is your time right now to spend quality time with yourself, treating yourself with loving kindness, gentle and soft. If we notice that our body or mind is not feeling so well, we can gently pat ourselves on the leg or give our leg a little rub. And we take a moment to express gratitude to ourselves for taking this time out of our schedule, out of our time to come together, learn, and practice mindfulness. And then everybody at their own time, when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes again. Open your eyes slightly. Come back. All right. Thank you, everyone, very much for being here today. I'm going to start where I just left off in the meditation. When we sit down to meditate, it is something that oftentimes will be also advised to you to do as self-care, to take quality time for yourself, to spend time with how your body is really feeling right now and how your mind is really feeling right now. Not just how we think that it's feeling, but actually in that moment, taking the time to observe ourselves. So we ensure that the time that we spend meditating is a time well invested. Now, throughout our days, many of us, and Cindy just mentioned it as well, we have to go to work or do other things, even sometimes meeting people, other interactions that we can't, that might not be what we would choose to do, but we'll have to do it. So then the question is, how can we elevate what we definitely have to do? And that's the first point. How can we elevate what we definitely have to do, that there's just simply no way around it? And that is Ajahn Jimmy's favorite lesson. And he says, I can show you a simple trick how you can make every moment worthwhile. Make sure that every moment you are gaining something for yourself. I would ask everyone right now to feel the surface underneath their buttocks. To just, feel. And it's funny because a moment before we were seated all the same, but we weren't aware of that feeling. And when you stay with it for a bit, it can be very grounding. And while you're knowing the surface underneath your butt, you can't know anything else because the mind can only hold one thing at a time. It can just flip-flop very quickly. So the first one is that what he calls knowing, and what you were just doing. Knowing clearly means what Jimmy is teaching is that while you're perceiving your buttocks and you intentionally perceive it, just like you intentionally perceive maybe your breath, maybe your posture during meditation, you are knowing clearly of what you are knowing. So if I was to ask you, what are you in awareness of right now? Where is your attention? Then you could tell me my breath, my body, the surface that I'm sitting on. And this knowing clearly is a bright state of mind. So what we do in meditation is we put a lot of these moments, times where we know clearly, behind each other, because we wander off in between. So we have one time, there's a little bit of a break, and then we have another time, a little bit of a break. And we have many, many, many of them. While we do that, every time that we are aware, even just for a second, we pull up positive energy. What does that mean? For the body, when we're sick, that's also one of Ajahn Jimmy's favorite things. When the body is sick, then we have the immune system and loads of different riddles that it can solve for us, and that it can help us with. We don't actually have to do anything. We don't have to bring our white blood cells into battle. We don't have to delegate them and tell them where to go. But our immune system does that by itself. The only thing we have to do is to add positive energy, meaning sleep enough, drink enough water, and eat healthy food. And then our body by itself, for most illnesses, it will be able to deal with it itself. We do the same with the mind. So coming back, how can you make sure that every moment, especially going about activities that we might have to do, how can we still get benefit out of them? And that is by bringing your mind back to yourself in between, what they call mindfulness. And you will stop knowing in between in the beginning, absolutely. that's to be expected. But we stop knowing, we never stop practicing. So we never stop practicing bringing the mind back. The moment we realize, we bring it back, just like in meditation, just outside of meditation. And you'll realize that those moments will accumulate. And it's like a resource. And funnily enough, at a point where you get very, very proficient with that, you won't feel less less energized even after the task. And that's something very, very, I also haven't gotten there, but the teacher of Jimmy, he can sit there and give a Dharma talk for like 5 hours straight, and he's just as relaxed after the 5 hours than he is before, because his knowing is so perfect by now, and we can start practicing right away. And it's something where it will help us, of course, pull a positive energy. It will also make us very, very aware of all the behavioral patterns that we personally have that we might not have been aware of before. It will make us aware when thoughts come up that before we might have gone along with immediately without even questioning it. But then we have that moment, we have that little bit of moment to choose if we want to go along with that narrative, if we actually want to believe that narrative. That's number one. So to finish that is, if you can take one thing away from this class today, then take knowing, because that way you will be able to bring benefit to yourself, no matter what you're doing. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, maybe just a question, Carmen, is can you give an example? Like, let's say I'm working, so is it just you take a moment to breathe and try to feel if there's something in your body, or like?
That's a very good question. Can you know your left hand right now, Cindy?
Yeah.
While I'm talking, can you still know your left hand?
Yes.
Perfect. So you are right that when we realize that we're not mindful anymore, it's really, really, really good to actually take a moment and just focus on it. Like for now, for example, you take the moment to just focus on your left hand. You take the moment just to breathe. But you don't have to stop doing it when you continue doing the task. It's a bit of a practice, of course. And like in the beginning, it will feel like you have to multitask. But it is something like every habit, like riding a bicycle or swimming, something that you get used to, and then it goes on automatic and you'll remember it. Do you still know your left hand, Cindy?
Yeah, I try to do it while you are talking, but it's a bit difficult to focus on what you're saying and focus on my hand.
Exactly, and it's supposed to be. You're doing it right.
Okay.
No, in the sense of bringing it there is not hard, right? I can to ask you, Cindy, can you know your nose, the tip of your nose?
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel the tip of your nose. So bringing your mind there actually only takes to set the intention, only to say, okay, I want to know my nose, or me asking you to do it, and it's there. So the mindfulness is not the hard part. The continuation of it, that is what people aim for immediately. They aim for like perfect, like I bring it to my nose and then for 10 minutes I'll know my nose. But then everyone who's ever meditated knows it's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't we face reality and we understand how it is. In the beginning, the way we try to do is simply that we bring it back to our nose or our left hand, whichever is easier. And then when we realize, oh, I'm not there anymore, we just bring it back. And sometimes only stays for like a second or two, but we strive to get those seconds, and then a moment, a bit later, to get again a moment, to get again a moment, because those moments, like I said, if you in the end, if you can accumulate them, they will accumulate to a very, very big span, and they will pull up energy that you will have the entire that they'll pull up energy. I'll stop with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So we strive to make it always really, really easy. The concept, like mindfulness, for example, just bringing the mind back to yourself. Like I tell you, can you know your left hand? You can. Like there's no way you can't. you have that ability. You know how to do mindfulness. Extending it, there are things trying to make it difficult, like thoughts are coming up, or even outside, like we perceive something and then we're not inside our body anymore. It's like we travel, our mind travels out of our eyes to the things that we're perceiving. And that's perfectly normal to be expected in the beginning. But and plus is it can be easier if you then take like breaks, like set a timer. People say that a lot in like how to work efficiently videos. They'll say like set a timer for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then take like a minute of break from your work. That can also really help in the beginning to make it a habit, just something to remind you outside. And then literally like you have to stay like you have to actually do it, because no one will remind you, be mindful 1 minute now. You will actually have to be like, okay, I'm going to be mindful now. The alarm rang. I've done it studying, and sometimes I skipped it. I was like, you know what, I just want to finish this, and then it rang, but I didn't do it. And it really makes work easier. It makes you feel better doing work. That's for certain. Um, I would actually love to ask Zoe as well what she's doing with that now. I haven't forgotten, Cindy, that you said there's a big um, question about meaningfulness and purpose, like in your life in general, which is an amazing question to ask, and it's amazing to even get to the point where you can ask that, where you've seen enough to start asking these questions. So I would love to hear Zoe's take on it, and just like whatever else you would like to share, because I know you've also seen a lot and like done quite the journey already. So yeah, love to hear your take on that.
Thank you, Carmen. I'll try and answer as best as I can. Sometimes I don't know how I do things, if that makes sense. Like I find it hard to explain it. But I think in terms of, I remember when I came home, Cindy, from traveling for a few months, it was just, I came home and I was like, I hate this. I hate it. Like I want out. Everything's so different. And I love like where I'm from, like Northern Ireland. Like I really love it. But when I came back, sometimes things are just highlighted in a different way, like the negative aspects sometimes a little more. I realized that people just always focused on like negative things a lot more. And yeah, it's just such like a different culture, a bit more negative and sometimes and things like that. So that's hard to deal with. And I think sometimes you can come back to people and realize, oh, I never noticed this about this person before. I never noticed that this is their view on life, or like that they're really always this negative or things like that. So that can be really difficult. And I think the keys are that I remember chatting to one of my friends who was still out traveling, who I'd met out there. It's like, I hate being home, really don't want to be here. It's so boring, it's just not the same. And we had such a close like group of friends in Vietnam, and he said for him, when he like left us in Vietnam and we all like went separate ways, he was really struggling to find people who were sort of like us. And then he realized that it wasn't about trying to find the same thing again. It was just realizing that like it was different, and it wasn't that it was good different or bad different. It was just different. And I was like, I need to actually adopt that mindset for being home and just realize that it's different. It's not the same as Thailand. It can't be, like it's complete opposites. So I just have to accept the beauty of what home can offer me and like what home is. And I think it started just realizing that everyone's on such a unique individual journey as well, that I can't like judge someone and be like, oh my god, you're so negative, you're like this, so why don't you just adopt a different mindset? I can't judge them for that, because I'm on my own journey and they're on theirs, and maybe that's something for them to work on. And it's not for me to like fix them. I think in terms of like culture, and I know what you mean about like corporate jobs and things like that. I think for me, I just kind of have to do like what's right for me and for my body personally, just because I've gone through like some health issues. in like 9 to 5, like kind of intense, like stressful job, it doesn't work for me. So I'm trying to find my own ways of carving out my own life and just like not worrying about like a mortgage and family and things like this in the future. Like not just being like, what do I need right now? What does my soul need right now? What does my body need right now? And trying to focus on that and finding ways to carve out my own life that kind of maybe goes very much against the stereotypical like go to university, which I did to be fair, but like go to university, get a job, find somebody, get married, get a mortgage, get a house, have children, have grandchildren, have a pension, all of this. And for me personally, I've kind of always chosen do not go that route, and just see what happens if I make it to 60 or 80. So yeah, I don't know if that really answered the question, but I think compassion is a big one, just having a lot of compassion for all the people around me. um Trying to not make judgments about people and just understand that they're on their own journey, and try and carve out time for me to be able to do things that I enjoy that are good for me, like meditation, doing these sessions, having friends around me who also understand that too and are on very much like their own journeys of doing different things, but respect mine, respect the fact that I like meditation, and they like to ask me about it and be like, how are your meditations going recently? And like that's really sweet. And I think having, if you can find people or like have people who you can be open and speak to about that, it's not necessarily like when you're on Puppy and like everyone's sort of the same, but it's like you can be like, oh, did you go to this class today? And it's just, I don't know, it's like this really, really special energy around it. But yeah, you just like if you can carve out your own people, your own little group that makes it feel like Puppy, that's really nice. And I think like just continually speaking with like Aisha and Jimmy almost weekly has been really, really beneficial. Like befriending Carmen and having someone like a friend who can also chat to you about this and be on similar journeys, trying to go to like the meditations as much as possible. But I do have a wee bit more free time, and I appreciate that it can be difficult, especially like when it's in the morning time to be able to go to it. But that's my long-winded answer. Sorry if I didn't answer that or if it makes no sense.
No worries at all. And thank you very much for your answer and for sharing. It is it's a really, really important point that people matter. Like and definitely people matter, but people around you, the people that surround you, it matters. The question is why, and the second one why also it's just always nice to hear someone sharing is that we can relate to, like we can relate to that, and it's nice to know that if we, for example, have a circle of people around us that is not interested in something different, that is not asking themselves these questions, then it can feel isolating. So it's really important to have, to have people around you, that it's like we sometimes call them like our kind of people, the kind that matches, that has the reason. Stop right there before I had give it too long in it. Why it matters who we surround ourselves is because a friend circle, even family, even a job, by the way, it's like a system. So there are, again, like components coming together, the people coming together, they do stuff together, and everything is like turning over time. Things happen, going on, and you are the product of that system that you run with. Not 100%, of course, but it does have quite an impact. So if you look at the goal, for example, of the company that you work for, you look at the goal that that your friend group, like overall, like if you take the middle line of all of them together, like what's the overall goal, and then the well, family, yeah, I guess as well, like families too, and it's like we can fast forward into the future. as long as we stay in those systems and like choose, for example, family, you can't just quit, and you shouldn't ever like burn bridges to your friends as well, is like if you just go along with it without asking yourself about it, then you can already see what's going to happen at the end, kind of, because you see the system, you see how it works, and you can anticipate the goal. So that is why one of the first one of the 32 wisdoms, I think it's 32, of the Buddha that he gave for monks or lay people, not 100% sure, is choose your friends wisely. Like choose the people wisely that you surround yourself with, if you can, like the ones that you can. So the point is, don't entertain like bad relationships, because if it has that kind of goal of degradation, any kind, like a toxic relationship, or also friends like that, is like a teenager that you see getting involved with the wrong crowd. Like he just started to be with them like the first day, and he can already predict what's going to happen, the kind of problems that he'll probably face if he stays and goes along with that, what that crowd does. And on a more subtle level is the same, because everything works systematically. It works in processes that are set in a sequence that will lead you to a certain outcome or goal. So if you say that you don't really have a goal, outcome. If you see how it works, you can already kind of predict the outcome. So it's a really, really, really important point, that we have to ask ourselves, does this match with us? Sometimes, now this is the other, does that match with us? I stop here. The other point, sometimes we can't choose. Sometimes we have to go for money. Sometimes we have to meet people for a reason. And that is when right view is absolutely necessary. So first point, choose wisely if you can. When you have the choice, choose wisely. If you don't, which is also happening in life, if you don't have the choice, you need to have the right view. You need to have the right view in the situation. What does that mean? The first step on the Eightfold Path, the path to getting closer to your true self that the Buddha taught, is right view. I'll give an example right away. The first time when Lopri Jimmy taught me this, I was at a temple with him, and he gave me an example for right view. There was a elderly gentleman with, I think, dementia, and he came every day to ask me what my name is. And then the next day he would come again and ask me what my name is. And like after 3 days, I didn't know the man at all. He barely spoke English. After the third day, I was like quite like a little bit like, this is weird. Why does this man come up to me every day and ask me what my name is? And that is when Jimmy, he taught me the importance of right view, because he said, first he said, look at him, like he is taking that effort every time to walk up to me and to ask me for my name, sometimes maybe even feel shy because he knows he's asked already, but for the life of him he just can't remember, and he just wants to make that nice conversation. He really tries the best as he can. It's actually quite charming because he doesn't do anything else. He just comes up to you really nice and then just asks you for your name. Then he's like, oh, nice. And then he goes again. So by changing the view on it, it was no longer weird. The same thing happened the next day, and it was no longer weird. It was kind of charming. I was like, oh, he's coming again. And I had the right view on it. The story ends actually with him writing my name down in his notebook, and then the next day he came to ask me where I'm from. So he was like starting to take notes. It was also very sweet. So why is the right view really important? The right view on something saves us from either desire or aversion. I'm going to use at least 2 minutes to talk about aversion here before I'm going to ask Chris on how he's doing and what he's facing. A lot of Buddhist texts, they warn you of desire, like desire of the outside world, because things come and things go, and you can get hurt if you have a strong desire towards something. And it also will take a lot of time and energy away from yourself to go out and seek something. The second one, aversion, is not talked about that much in lay people circles, I think. And that one is when you are in a situation that you have to be in and you feel bad, like you can feel it. It's a feeling, for many people say they can feel it in their gut. Even talking to people, they can't avoid talking to them, maybe their boss or something, where they feel like it's a negative energy that that person is like radiating. That there's a not so nice feeling that arises inside, and that's what we call aversion. And that feeling itself, if at the time we're not mindful, also pulls up energy. So do a full circle. In the beginning, I told you, in the moments you're mindful, you're pulling up positive energy. In the moments where you're not mindful and basically locked by the feeling of aversion and its narrative, you're pulling up negative energy. So there's actually no such thing as that someone else can suck your energy from you. It's physiologically and physically impossible. But rather, it matters which system are you running. Are you running a system that runs on good energy, or are you running a system that runs on and produces bad energy? And that's why, like, right view is basically how can I find the right view, the right perspective on what is happening already, so that it no longer causes me pain, so that I no longer fall victim to aversion, to the feeling that feels like that, and we feel like, why do I have to be here? Like all these thoughts will come up. This is not like this is not like that, and we go along with it, and we feel worse over time. Lumpy Jimmy did a class on helplessness. I really recommend you to check that out. And he talks about that the actual problem is not the things that you worry about, but it's the worrying, because the worrying is the one that's actually pulling up the negative energy. If it is a situation in your family, if it is this or that. Now, I'm very well aware that you can't just be like, okay, I don't want to worry anymore, and then it stops. Very much aware. Just like meditation, practice. Like it's a practice, and it doesn't just happen like that. What we can do to make sure that we're not getting hurt in the situation is to have the right view. It's like my stepfather actually said that. He said like, but then should I just look away if people, for example, do like bad stuff? And I'm just like, it's not about looking away. It's about protecting yourself by understanding. Now, in that example that I gave, I understood why the elderly gentleman was acting the way he was acting. And then that feeling no longer arose inside of me, hurting, like actually like hurting in my gut for me. Because I understood. And with how people around you act, what you can't change, something that what someone else says, what someone else does, you can't change that. If you are not their parent, even if you're their parent, there's things to go about it, other ways to go about it, but you can't just immediately change it. It is outside of what you can do. But you can definitely, and that's what people say a lot, you can definitely, you are responsible for the view you have on it. And that one is so important. Why is it good to have the right view? Not even for the other person. That one's just the second beneficiary, or the world at large. It is for yourself. Can you see that when people are misled by, sometimes by negative emotions, sometimes by other people, by greed, by anger, by this, by that, can you see that they are misled? Can you see that they're also hurting? Sometimes you don't see that, but you see what I'm saying? Because that one, if you can't change it, it will give you a peace, an inner peace, just for yourself. So yeah, to finish this one before I'm gonna ask Chris, or first I'm gonna ask for questions, is like, when you go throughout your day, set the goal to notice when there's aversion inside you arising, either towards people or the present situation you're in, or anything in the world at large, about corporations, climate change, anything. And just notice. For the first one, like I said, come back to the lesson I made in the beginning, just only knowing. Just only know that it is there. Only know that this is aversion arising inside of you. And not judging it, not trying to force it away. That's not how it works. Just know that it is there, because that is the only way how you're going to have a choice to adapt a different view. Okay, that's it for me. I would very, very much first ask if there's any questions on this. And if there's, first ask if there's any questions. Sorry.
I had a couple of questions.
Yes, please.
Well, first, there's so much interesting stuff that you talked about, and everything is just so interesting.
Thank you.
I think the last thing that you talked about with people like not really being people not like people are like kind of like walking bad instincts, or they're only kind of like they're only like bound to their own conditioning and their own kind of patterns and emotional attachments and all kind of things. Or they're kind of like, I feel like after I was in Thailand, there was so much understanding about this, that people are kind of like, it's not really them that are like taking the decision to be kind of negative, because like nobody really wants to be negative, but it's like they kind of, it's just their own conditioning and everything like that. So it's so fascinating and interesting. And I think I wanted to first ask about the knowing that you talked about in the beginning. It's interesting to hear it from somebody else, because I'm so used to hearing it from Lumpy Jimmy, and you explained it like very clearly and very, very well. So, but I was just wondering, because knowing clearly, for example, the body or the breath, or or anything, or any object, what would you say is kind of the reason and the cause for the benefits and the positive energy that we experience? Is it because of the kind of the detachment from our thoughts, and detachment from our bad instinct, if you could say? Or could you explain a little bit further on that?
That's a really, really good question. I'm gonna need a moment to make sure that I answer it nicely. your mind is always holding something. There's always something in your mind. When we're, for example, lost in our thoughts, when we are maybe entertaining thoughts of aversions, anything, it's like the mind is holding that. In terms of aversion, for example, imagine like it's like a black dark thing that the mind is holding. While the mind is holding that, just like with holding something radioactive, the longer you hold it, the more does it like soak into your skin? Does it soak into your body? Does your body like soak it up? And the more pollution, well, that's a nice word, the more pollution you accumulate in your body and in your mind. When you have any positive state of mind, knowing, for example, awareness is one state of mind, and it's the easiest one because you can just, like I said, like you can just say, I want to know my left hand. And then it's there. Then the mind is holding that. I don't know if I have different example. This one. I can't see. Anyway, holding a bright state of mind, knowing, and any something else like compassion, stillness, loving kindness, loads of things that the mind can hold, that are a positive state of mind. And while you're holding it, it's like the opposite of holding a radioactive kind of thing. While the mind is holding it, it's like it is soaking all the bad stuff out of you, basically, like all the radioactive stuff that your body and your mind accumulated before. It's like soaking it out of you, just like getting it away, and decreasing the pollution and increasing the purity. That is, I think, an easy way to explain, but I think that is a really good question, and I would love to come back to you again and like ask, or yeah, I will ask as well, and get like Longfujimi's take on it too. That's the way to imagine it. It's like actually literally holding something, and people see that the Sangha, right, the monks, but also the practitioners, are the ones that hold the Dhamma. So hold the teaching, but Dhamma can also be translated to state. So the Sangha are the ones that hold the state. In that case, like mindfulness, for example, but like any positive state of mind that you call Dhamma, that are aware of it, what is in their mind. That is another thing that I really loved when I learned about the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. The way that Longfujimi explained it to me, that was completely different than I studied before. So as long as you are practicing this, you are also part of the Sangha, no longer a monk, but it is the definition of what the Sangha means. Did I somehow answer your question a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. And you can come back if you after you yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
I had, yeah, I did, but if I can, I'll ask one more question if you.
Yes, please.
Okay. I think the part with knowing and awareness, I had a question about the kind of the relationship between emotions and that awareness or that knowing, because I feel like a lot of the time there can be kind of a sort of a, I don't know, it's like a emotional disconnection where I feel like if I kind of stay as that awareness and hold on to that awareness or that knowing, that it starts to become like a or there's a good detachment that grows, like a good detachment from the thoughts and kind of the conditioning and the mind patterns. But it's like, I feel like on a certain level there's like something missing, where I feel like I haven't like fully integrated some emotions, maybe some repressed emotions and things like that, which creates kind of a sort of a feeling of of disharmony or disconnection on some type of level. And I was just like, I think my question was just like, um the relationship there, like how will the knowing just clear it by itself, the repressed emotions, or is it like, is there a combination of both, or yeah.
If you want time to think, Carmen, I can do a little bit if you like. It's something just came up for me. If you want more time to think.
Please go ahead.
That is such a good question, Chris. Like all of your questions have been really good. I think it's only because this reminds me of, you felt like you were talking about me as well, because it's something that I used to do for 30 years, was suppress my emotions because I did not like
Yeah.
some of them. So like I just would like ignore them or pretend that they
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
exist. They're
absolutely.
not part of me. Like it's
Yeah,
only the happiness and the joy and anything that was
yeah,
like sad or like upsetting or like anger, rage, disappointment, shame, get any of those that I considered like negative. I hated like having that feeling, and I did anything to try and like kind of distract myself from it. So one, I started to not label them as negative anymore. Those emotions were just as important and just as beneficial to me as the like happy emotions or the positive emotions. And I stopped even trying to label like happiness as something positive and try to make them more neutral. Like these emotions are just emotions. Sometimes they're telling me something and sometimes they're just there. And then I went through like a difficult period around February, March, where it was like these emotions kept bubbling up to the point where just I could like cry uncontrollably, and then I couldn't like stop it, and I would ring out like Jimmy and be like, I can't stop crying. And then he would like talk me through it and everything. And then it went on for like weeks and weeks. It was very up and down, really up and down. And then one day I'd had enough. I was like, I don't know what else to do. I've tried to acknowledge it. I've tried to just know it. But what I was trying to do when I was trying to know it was, I was like, okay, if I just know this sadness now, it will go away. Then it can go away because it's been acknowledged. But for me, because I tried to push those emotions away and not acknowledge them for 30 years, one, I had the wrong intention when I was trying to acknowledge them, because it wasn't for the purpose of just trying to acknowledge them. It was because I was trying to get rid of them as fast as possible. So I wasn't really acknowledging them. And then two, I realized, oh my God, these emotions are just trying to say hello to me. This sadness is just trying to say, like, hi, Zoe, I would love your attention if that's okay. Like, I'm here. And then so I pictured my sadness and I was like, okay, what does my sadness look like? What does it feel like? What does it need? And then my sadness was like speaking to me, and it was like, I just want to be acknowledged. Like, I'm feeling really sad. And I was like, oh no, you poor thing. Like, why are you so sad? And then it like opened up and showed me like fear and anxiety and all these different things it was carrying around. And I was like, you poor thing. Like, no wonder you're so sad. Like, I would be really sad too if I was carrying all this around. I was like, would you love some company? And the sadness was like, yes, like that's all I want. And I was like, okay, I've got you. I was like, why don't you sit? And I like pictured in my mind that there's this like wooden log. I was like, why don't you sit down beside me? So it was like here and I was here. So there was still distance. I would like wasn't in the sadness. I wasn't being the sadness, but I was like acknowledging that the sadness was there with all these other emotions inside it. And I was like, just sit with me for a while. And then for me, ever since doing that, I find it easier to deal with my emotions and let them be here. So I think for me, because like I was repressing them for so many years, they actually just needed acknowledged. And it was actually really simple, but I just didn't know for 30 years. It's we say like you have to like look after your mind and parent your mind. And I think it's the same with your emotions. Like we all have emotions for a reason, like they're there, and that stops them from bubbling up so strongly to the surface. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think try and befriend your emotions. Try not to just like let because naturally things like old trauma, old things like old judgments, they will slowly kind of clear out when you bring up that bright energy. But I think befriending your emotions too will make you like more comfortable with them, and they won't be so like repressed. And if you're ever like having a strong emotion, you're like, shit, I don't want to sit with this emotion. I don't know how to befriend it. You can please feel free to like message me, and we can like try and walk through it together or talk through it. So I don't know if that's answered your question in a way, but it just resonated with me, and that's something that's helped me a lot. And ever since, none of those emotions have been really strong, and we're trying to become like good friends with each other, which isn't always easy, but we're trying.
That's actually really amazing to hear. And yeah, a really good answer. And it's great to hear that I'm not alone in that experience of having like pushed away emotions and just like refusing to look at it, or just wanting to like to feel better or to feel good, and meditating and kind of like not really acknowledging that it's there. And I think that's exactly kind of where I'm at, where I feel like I start to really understand this, and I feel like I kind of need to just make a bit more room for them, and to let them be there, like you said. So yeah, and it's also great if I can message you or yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing, Chloe. And I'm gonna, quickly before, don't worry, we're still gonna meditate an hour, so we've got it. But knowing, you said the relationship between knowing and those emotions. Knowing is neutral. It means that knowing means knowing the positive emotions. Knowing means knowing the negative emotions. We just know what is the reality right now. The reality right now, I'm anxious. That is what we're knowing. The reality right now, I'm happy. Oh, I'm happy. That's the reality I'm knowing. The reality right now, I'm sad. You're knowing that there is sadness. When we suppress our emotions, it is imagine you have a full deck table, like a full deck table, loads of dishes on them, and you have a tablecloth underneath. And you say, I just want this table to be clean. I just want it to be clean. So what you do is you pull the tablecloth, like everything comes crashing down to the ground, and everything is now beneath the table. So if you look just like this, basically, it looks perfectly clean. It looks like it's calm. It looks like there's nothing on the table. Very, very neat. But then the debris is like underneath the table. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like a table. If we think that it is like that, subconsciously, we will try to force it. We will try to force everything back into its place. We'll try to put the cups back there. We have to this there, thinking that it's our job. But when we know, we don't have a job to put anything anywhere. We just know, meaning that the mind does everything automatically anyway. We can trust in the fact that if it's a negative emotion, by knowing it, our mind is actually like, basically you can imagine that it is a negative state of mind, and our mind flip-flops really quick between the bad one and the knowing one, the bright state of mind, until we start to gain the majority. So from maybe 70% like locked in that feeling and 30% knowing, we go and we shift. which takes endurance, which is something Jimmy talked about in another class. I can also recommend. But knowing clearly in two things, knowing is not neutral. So we're knowing just whatever is there, the reality that is. And the second one being that what is our job? What is our role and responsibility? And with knowing, our responsibility is just simply to know. We don't even have to know where those cups are going on the table. It is not in that example. We just have to stay there. And yeah, and like to the best of your endurance. Yeah, to the best of your endurance. Yeah, like to the best of your abilities to everything. Does that make sense, Chris?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I also kind of feel like not repressing emotions can become like a weird thing in itself, because then I feel like I have to feel, and it becomes this weird thing where I'm not really letting it happen by itself. I'm not really just knowing. I'm like trying to force something, and it becomes like very strange. So what you're
Don't
saying
fall
is,
on the tablecloth. Meaning like try to do anything. Just
yeah.
like that's the key thing. Like forcing even it to be there or forcing it to be away
Yeah.
is first not being neutral anymore, and secondly thinking that you have a job that you don't have, thinking that you have a responsibility that you don't have.
Yeah. So what I should really just try to do is just to know, and to know clearly, and do that all the time, so it becomes automatically. And
Yes, easier said than done. That's why we are all here.
Yeah.
Because there are always things that you run into. Trust me. I've been doing this for around a year now. So don't get discouraged. Don't ever get discouraged. You're on the right track. We're also there, and we're also not perfect.
It's good to hear.